grand jury decided not to charge a Louisville police officer for killing Breonna Taylor, and she was shot during a no-knock warrant. And her boyfriend allegedly was the person they were looking for. When they were coming in, her boyfriend let off a shot because he didn't know there was police. He thought it was people breaking into his apartment. Once he let off that shot, the police shot multiple times into the apartment, killing his girlfriend, Breonna Taylor. And so the Louisville police officer, they decided not to charge him. And one former police officer was indicted for recklessly endangering Taylor's neighbors, but the other two officers were not charged. Now, in regards to that situation, along with the George Floyd, I'm sure you know about that, there's been a congressman named Justin Amash of Michigan, who had basically had submitted a bill to get rid of qualified immunity. And so what I wanted to ask you was, what did you think in regards to victims of shootings? They can basically go after the police officer through a civil suit because unfortunately statistics show that police officers are rarely held accountable legally when it comes to these type of shootings. And so usually during civil suits, qualified immunity is what protects the police officer.
Yes.
Now that if this bill is passed, it will end that qualified immunity and enable a citizen to be able to sue the police officer directly. Now, what I'm asking you is, does that help, or would that weaken the relationship of policing and the public?
Well, I think people have a misconception of what qualified immunity is. So qualified immunity is a reasonable officer standard. What would a reasonable officer at this point in time in their career know or do? And the qualified immunity, if you take that away, I think that's a very negative thing. I think it hurts our police force because the thing is, if a cop does something illegal and it's criminally illegal, qualified immunity goes away anyway. But if you're saying that, hey, any citizen can sue an officer in the performance of their duties, see, what you're talking about is a very specific thing. We're talking about a shooting or something goes on. Maybe the family doesn't feel like that was fair or equitable, so they want to sue the officer civilly. Well, that is one case. What about the traffic stop where I pull you over and you don't like the service you got, so you sue me? You know, I just think you get down a road where you open it up to so many things, and once you take qualified immunity away, I truly believe that we lose the level of professionalism of officers that we have patrolling our streets today, because there's nothing to keep them safe. Because once again, if you do something criminally in the performance of your duties, qualified immunity is not afforded to you. And so I think that's what people need to understand. And this really opens the door to a lot of things that could happen negatively on the policing side. And am I biased to that? Yes, I am, because it's law enforcement is one thing I love, and that it's a profession that I truly believe in. My thing is, how do we go forward as an agency, as law enforcement, as a profession and community to grow? Because from each and every situation, though there might have been negative outcomes, how can we grow from that? If you want to talk about how can we rethink or, look at no-knock warrants. Me personally, I think no-knock warrants provide us a tool that can keep many people safe. But when you talk about the approval of those no-knock warrants, maybe we should have more, more fail-safes or more eyes on it to have just more oversight to say, hey, does this situation determine? So if we want to look at those situations and say, hey, how can we grow and get better? I'm up for that. But to negatively impact a whole profession by taking qualified immunity away, I think that negatively impacts our nation, our communities as a whole, because I think we'll see a lesser product than what we're receiving now.
And it's very important for the audience to hear it on both sides.
Yes, I do. I do.
Well, that's why I'm glad I asked you, because we've only heard, senator's position on it.
And it's perspective.
Sure.
And the thing is, and that's why I've been so active at the Capitol, is because you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I said understanding is so important. If you don't know why I do what I do, how can you make a well-informed decision? even as a state lawmaker. You know, I think it's important that you know, this transcends any party line. I think it's important that we know what to expect of each other, or why we do what we do. I think that's how we help each other out, and we don't do things that would ultimately be disastrous for our entire communities, you know, and just because of a non-well-informed decision.